Okay, so now let's look over the 5 pages of reading, plan how we're going to take notes on it, and do together this first page of the notes. So this textbook automatically and already divides things pretty well into chapter headings, headings, and subheadings. Okay, for example, the chapter heading is the Atlantic slave trade. They have a heading setting the stage, which is an overview. In red, we have a main heading, causes of the slave trade. Then under the causes of the slave trade, we have subheadings of talking about slavery in Africa. You see it's bolded. The demands for Africans, bolded. Next page. And Spain and Portugal lead the way. So their heading is causes. And the subheadings are slavery in Africa, demand for slaves, and Spain and Portugal are the causes. Then they go to another, the second main heading, slavery is spreading. So causes, spread through the Americas. And the subheadings under the spread are England starts dominating, African cooperation and resistance. And then they go to another main topic heading, the forced journey. Under the forced journey, that's separated into triangular trade and the Middle Passage. Then they start talking about slavery in the Americas. And that heading is separated into the subtopics of a harsh life, resistance, and rebellion. Okay, just those two, a harsh life and resistance and rebellion. And then the final topic is consequences of the slave trade, and they don't subdivide that at all. They just, boom, boom, boom. Maybe if you look at those paragraphs, they have topics, but most likely this would just be under consequences, bullet, 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 bullet for whatever you think. So you can see how this book has divided the notes basically to the standard how you do simplified notes. Chapter, topics, subtopics, and info under the subtopics. So let's go through how it's going to look. I make the chapter title, The Atlantic Slave Trade. No reason to change it. It's already pretty good, already concise. I then start with setting the stage and realize that's just an overview. So my heading is Overview. And I'm not going to separate the overview into subheadings. I'm just going to read and take notes on it. So let's do that. Sugar plantations and tobacco farms required a large supply of workers to make them profitable for their owners. European owners had planned to use Native Americans as a source of cheap labor, but millions of Native Americans died from disease, warfare, and brutal treatment. Therefore, the Europeans in Brazil, Caribbean, and southern colonial North America soon turned to Africa for workers. This demand for cheap labor resulted in the brutalities of the slave trade. Okay, so what I pulled out from that, and you might pull out something different, I pulled out demand for cheap labor in the colonies, North and South America. Native American slaves died due to disease and treatment, and Europeans enslaved Africans. There could be some more information in there. Those are the ones I pulled out. I feel fine with that. You don't have to get everything. You have to get what you think is important. And if you miss something, that could be fine. Did I miss sugar plantations and tobacco farms? Yes. Could it go in there? Perhaps. That's pretty detailed. It does tell us the major sources of natural resources or cash crops, tobacco farms and sugar plantations. I get that. It's your choice. You're not going to get everything. You try to get the most important. Okay, so then I move on to big topic, the causes of African slavery. Well, I do understand we are talking about the Atlantic slave trade, so I just put causes, simplified it. So when I go back on my notes, I know, oh, there's the Atlantic slave trade, there's the overview, there's the causes. And we know that we've got 3 subheadings here. So let's take the first one, slavery in Africa. Slavery in Africa, underline it there, and now I'm ready to take the notes. I suggest quickly reading for understanding the paragraph and then go and put the notes down. If you take notes on every single sentence, what you're going to get is just you're going to understand it less, and there's going to be a heck of a lot more notes, okay? Maybe take notes every couple sentences, or read the whole paragraph first, then take some notes on it, okay? That gives you a little time to process what's really important, okay? So, slavery in Africa. Slavery had existed in Africa for centuries. In most regions, it was a relatively minor institution. The spread of Islam into Africa during the 7th century, however, ushered in an increase in slavery and the slave trade. Muslim rulers in Africa justified enslavement with the Muslim belief that Muslim prisoners of war could be bought and sold as slaves. As a result, between 650 and 1600, Muslims transported 17 million Africans to the Muslim lands of North Africa and Southwest Asia. In most African and Muslim societies, slaves had some legal rights and an opportunity for social mobility. In the Muslim world, a few slaves even occupied positions of influence and power. Some served as generals in the army. In African societies, slaves could escape their bondage in numerous ways, including marrying into the family they served. Okay, so what do we take out of that? So under the subheading of slavery in Africa, I took out the note, small African slavery. And then Muslim rulers equal more slavery, little arrow, 17 million. I thought those were important notes. That you might not know because it's your first time reading this chapter. 17 million is an astronomically huge number. That's that's why I knew to take it. And then that second paragraph, the book says the book says that the slaves had opportunity and some rights. Now I do want to editorialize really quickly right here. It's very difficult to say facts of history without actually giving some sort of unintended interpretation, okay? So this paragraph right here, in my mind, I get what they're trying to say. In most African and Muslim societies, slaves had some legal rights and opportunity for social mobility, okay? But let us all remember that for whatever positive they put here, slavery is really bad and really life-altering and really, really bad. I want you to just take this paragraph and change it around. In most African Muslim societies, slaves had some legal rights. Well, that means in some, slaves had no legal rights and no opportunity for social mobility. In the Muslim world, a few slaves even occupied positions of influence and power, which means if a few did, the majority did not occupy positions of influence and power. Some served as generals in the army. Most did not. And for every one general serving in the army, there were hundreds, if not thousands, that were rowing a boat on the Mediterranean under the deck for their whole lives as a slave. So I understand the book wants to give us some facts about slavery and different types of slavery in history, but it's very, very, very important to remember slavery was really, really bad for the vast majority of people who were enslaved. And that would be why in my notes I said the book says slaves had opportunity and some rights. Okay, and then we hit the subtopic of demand for Africans. Let's read. The first Europeans to explore Africa were the Portuguese during the 1400s. Initially, Portuguese traders were more interested in trading for gold than for captured Africans. That changed with the colonization of the Americas as natives began dying by the millions. Europeans saw advantages in using Africans in the Americas. First, many Africans had been exposed to European diseases and had built up some immunity. Second, many Africans had experience in farming and could be taught plantation work. Third, Africans were less likely to escape because they did not know their way around the new land. Fourth, their skin color made it easier to catch if they were escaped and tried to live among others. Next page. In time, the buying and selling of Africans for work in the Americas, known as the Atlantic slave trade definition, became a massive enterprise. Between 15 and 1600, nearly 300,000 Africans were transported to the Americas. During the next century, the number climbed to almost 1.3 million. By the time the Atlantic slave trade ended around 1870, Europeans have imported 9.5 million Africans to the Americas. Okay. And so I probably should have pulled out the Portuguese were the first. That seems important, so let's pretend I did that, right? So demand for Africans should have a little bullet here saying Portuguese started the trade. Okay. I'm looking for causes and effects. Okay, Native American slaves died because of disease. Okay, so I figured that was an important note in here. I put down Europeans wanted African slaves. And then from the last paragraph here, I probably should have put a definition of Atlantic slave trade. That's anytime you have a definition, you've got to get it in. So, okay. So I did have Atlantic slave trade. I should have probably done something special with that, with a little line with a definition or something like that. But I did get the total date range, 1500 through 1870. And I gave the total amount of people who were enslaved on that time, 9.5 million. Now, here's something. I mean, they did do different date ranges with different amounts of people, but we are condensing all the information into what we think is the most important. So I think the whole date range and the total amount of people hurt by this is important, okay? And so that's the one I definitely want to get. So I was okay with not getting how many people in 15 to 1600 and 16 to 1700, okay? If I wanted to, I could say it increased, but I think getting the total was important. Now, I want to take a second to mention something. When I put on my notes, you may wonder, there's clearly a list here. Europeans seeing advantages in using Africans as slaves, and clearly a 1, 2, 3, 4. And usually when you have lists, you would put that down in your notes. If the book lists something, it's usually fairly good notes to do bullets and put down that list. And when I did it, I consolidated all those into Europeans wanted African slaves. I summarized it. And here's why I did that. This is from my personal opinion and how I teach history. I have never been comfortable comparing the advantages of someone being hurt. The Native Americans were being hurt. They were being enslaved. The Africans during the Atlantic slave trade were being hurt. They were being enslaved. I don't teach that by trying to enumerate and list the advantages of hurting one group of people over another. So in my personal teaching, when faced with such a list as this, I will summarize it as the Europeans wanted African slaves and leave it at that. So let's recap what we have done. We've started our notes, the Atlantic slave trade, setting the stage is our overview. Main topic, causes, with subtopics, slavery in Africa, demand for Africans, Spain and Portugal lead the way. Okay, so you're going to have to continue. Spain and Portugal lead the way. Take the notes for that. Then you're going to get slavery spreads. Slavery spreads is a new topic. And under those, you're going to take notes on England starts to dominate. And you'll take notes about African cooperation and resistance. And notice what I did here. I'm probably at that point at the end of my page. So instead of starting a new topic, a forced journey down here, I just flipped the page over and started there. Okay, I don't like to break I like natural breaks, easy breaks. I don't like to force a break right in the middle. So then we get a forced journey with a subtopic of triangular trade. Take those notes. And then a subtopic of the middle passage. And then you're going to go to a new topic, slavery in America, with a subtopic, a harsh life, resistance and rebellion, and then you're going to finish up with consequences of the slave trade. So, miscellaneous questions, miscellaneous tips. If there's a vocab word, get that vocab down. Maybe put a spot at the beginning of your notes. Maybe put a little, like we usually do with notes, put it up on the top for some vocab. I don't know, put it at the end, maybe some vocab. Put it on the side. Just make a spot for vocabulary. That's a tip. Things that are like here. There is good information in like history in depth and such like that. Find a place to put anything that's good in there, okay? Maps mean something. Maps can give you good information, okay? This is the triangular trade system in map form. If there's something interesting here, put the information down under your triangular trade subheading. Maybe there's something really good here, okay? Analyzing primary sources. Okay, this is information. Figure if there's something for you, figure it out. Okay, if there's something that's important information, figure out a place to put it. All right, good luck. And thanks for watching.